Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, and this will be part 2 in this series where I'm looking at the number 33, the measurement 33 connections to NASA Freemasons, but also, more importantly, ancient connections, firstly to Thoth, God weights and measures, Hermes Trismegistus, God of weights and measures, knowledge, science, astronomy. It can also be seen in Nuar, Fuzi, Ningishida, and these other gods who carry the measuring rod, but 33, Sun, Earth, and Moon. Now, firstly, if you look at the traditional Masonic symbols, now before free and accepted Masons, we had, where did these symbols emerge from? They emerged from craft guilds, stonemasons, tilers, bricklayers, the actual craft of construction and building, the great cathedrals, who were the masons who built so many structures across ancient Rome, ancient Greece, across Persia, Babylon, and in Egypt. Masons claim heritage going back to these very ancient times, but apart from the more symbolic nature of more modern Freemasons, but what are these symbols showing? Well, we have the columns, of course, Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian, but the compass, geometric symbols, geometry. Now, even notice free and free, as well as a little third there. But the square, the level, also to measure the plumb bob, so that is to measure level horizontally, that is to measure level vertically. The ruler, now, to measure. Masons, whether it's non-esoteric or whether it's just purely practical masons or carpenters or anyone in any building trade, these tools of measurement are essential. And the units of measure will incorporate so much else, but also the symbolism. We'll look into it now. It's free in there. Now it's there's also there's a free there as well. But anyway, before we go there, these are the traditional symbols, tools of Masons, practical masonry, architects, stonemasons, anyone involved in construction. And that's why these tools are so special, because they have a practical purpose, but also in the symbolic sense, accuracy and truth in measurement is, as is seen in the Bible and the Book of the Dead and these other texts, that the being pure and honest in your weights and measures is strongly connected to morality as well. But at the very least, in the practical sense, these symbols are very important and to measure. Now, measure length, gods of weights, so measure masons, stonemasons, builders, the trade, the craft, and measuring. So 33, sun, earth, and moon. So we're looking at the number 33, the significance of it, but also especially this measurement 33, which is repeated in the military industrial complex as well, and there's other references, so we'll just in this particular episode we'll just be focusing on this. But the number 33, now it just so happens, so we'll just here is SI, or Standard International Standard Weights and Measures. So for instance 33 feet, and that's the yards, cubits, feet, span, palm, and how they break down. Now it just so happens that 33 feet converts to 30 Indus, Mohenjo-Daro, or Harappan feet. It's one of the most ancient of the civilizations in the world. Now then, the Babylonian scale, Royal Babylonian, there were Royal Babylonian scale and the Babylonian scale. One was for the common people, Royal Babylonian was for temples, palaces, etc. Now the Babylonian scale doesn't it breaks down into fingers and grains, but at a different ratio, but still 3600 all connects. Now the Saxon foot, that was a predecessor to the allegedly modern English foot, which we would see over here, 33. Now the Saxon foot is at a rate of 1.1 modern English feet is a Saxon foot. And there we see how that breaks down now. 432, 108 foot. All your harmonics there. I've done plenty of other videos on these numbers and how it's the geometry, astronomy, arithmetic, music. It's just all in there. So I won't cover those again in the episode. If I remember, I'll put some links to earlier videos on these, because these are just overflowing with the same symbolic connections, also measurement connections connecting to, well, especially sun, earth, and moon, but undoubtedly the importance of it in geometry, music, arithmetic. it's all very, very clear, very measurable, and it's undisputable, really. Now, the deeper connections to astronomy and this knowledge of the size of the Earth and distances, well, firstly, ancient Rome, and not that they will probably be originators of it, but they had a very, very high level of understanding of the size, relative size of Sun, Earth, and Moon, relative distance of Sun, Earth, and Moon. They were able to do this with very simple techniques and logic. This was exactly the same simple techniques and logic that people did in recent time. Before satellites, we had very accurate measures of the Earth, the Moon, the Sun, and the relative distances between them. This is not something of the space age. People were able to work this out prior to the space age, prior to satellites. And, well, again, that's clear in history. You can just look it up when size of Earth, Moon, relative sizes were developed. Very clear. Can be done with very simple techniques. But, so we'll be focusing now on this column here and the 33 feet. Now, 33 feet, a harmony point between ancient measure systems. I could also include Doric, Ionic, Long, and some others in here as well, but just want to focus on these particular ones now, especially the Indus, Babylonian, and the Saxon foot. And again, the Saxon foot, the predecessor of the modern English foot, origins, and it's been passed on because you can find it through cultures moving through time. It didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was part of an ongoing tradition. But 33 feet, harmony point, ancient measures. How does that connect to Sun, Earth, and Moon? Well, so 1188, let's begin with that. So on the long hand scale, or Ionic feet, Earth and the Moon. Now, one Ionic foot is 0.96 feet. The Salamis stone, this is, again, written down in the Salamis stone, which is ancient conversion tool for between various ancient units of measure, including the Ionic. Ionic Columns, which is one of the schools of ancient Greek architecture, the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian, and an Ionic foot. So it wasn't just a aesthetic style of architecture, it was also a measurement Ionic, because that was, as in Ionia, one of the regions of ancient Greece. And the House of it, so back to the House of the Temple in Washington, headquarters of 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemasonry in the US. 33 columns, each of those are 33 feet high, and they are Ionic columns. Now, the Ionic column, you can find it again, tracing boards, a Doric column, the Corinthian column, and the Ionic column. See the swirls there? The Ionic system. So it's a system of measurement. It's also a style of architecture. Not just the columns, the way that the temples are decorated also is Ionic. You also, so a more modern Mason tracing board. Now, even there's so much stuff to come in regards to 33, but just so Ionic column, the column of wisdom, or the column female column. The Doric is male, Ionic is female, and the Corinthian is the virgin or the maiden. Also Ionian, or the Ionic musical mode, as well as Dorian or Doric as well. So there's a lot going. Now, 24 feet is 25 Ionic feet, is 24 to 25 scale, which converts to other ancient units of measure. It's just always, it's measurable. It's repeated so often. At some point, coincidence ends. And anyway, now the long scale or long hand. So what is a long? Well, it's also known as a Persian foot. One long or one Persian foot equals 1.056 feet. That's 33 times 32 is 1056. And we'll get into more in this future. But so the Persian foot, but there are some who would suggest that the long foot is actually, again, very, very ancient. For instance, Stonehenge Phase 1. Before the modern Stonehenge, or not, or the ancient Stonehenge, Stonehenge went through various developments. And so the original Stonehenge didn't have a stone circle there. It was the Aubrey holes. But the ditch, a henge is earthworks. So when people say Stonehenge, it's really a stone circle inside of a henge. So there are a lot of stone circles, but there are many more henges. These are these circular, these ditches. So the henge is the earthworks for ditch. But there we see 270 long foot, 300 long foot, and the ditch itself 330 long feet at that scale. So now that's measuring earthworks. Ditch is very difficult because erosion over time. It's not like a nice piece of stone where you have a definite edge to measure from, but at least as a suggestion. But 330 we see there now. 528 fingers. Okay, 528 times 2 is 1056. This is an important reference because 528, now the mean diameter of the earth anyway, 528 long span. This, well, New Jerusalem, Solfeggio. Now, for instance, 1 mile is 5,280 feet. 32 rods is 528 feet. 33 pounds is 528 ounces. I'll get into more in this because this 32 over 33 or 12 over 13. 33 on the Scottish Rite, 13 on the York Rite. This is a lovely connections to three-dimensional geometry. And, well, many other aspects, but just sticking, so that's a earth measure. And, of course, the mile as well, so, you know, miles, yep. But, okay, now, 396 inches from 33 feet. Well, again, the long foot measures the earth. And, again, Ionic measures the moon. 132, well, that's long scale again, on measures the earth. Now, even these older systems of measure, so when they used to measure fish, 13,200 fish was called the last. You'll also, okay, you'll see it'll appear in other very important geometric and other connections as well, which brings us to 44. The sun and the moon at 44,000, 44,000 on the canonical scale. Canonical fathom or canonical cubits. Now, what is that? Well, John Neal, I think, well, at least one of the popularized it, let's say. And so 1 canonical cubit is 1.728 feet. Oh, 1728 reference. That's 6 over 5 cubed. Now, why is that really nice, really important, this canonical scale? Well, firstly, 33 feet. So let's go, or 30 Indel's feet, or 30 Royal Babylonian, or 30 Saxon feet. Now this brings us to the pendulum. So a pendulum at 30 degrees, if that length, well, 1 second, I've done a whole series on pendulums and these connections, but just to do it quickly, now what we have is, well, if it's 3 feet, that's 1.00584 meters. Now, that 3 Indus, Sumerian or Saxon feet is 3.3 English feet, so 1/10 for 33 feet, which gives us an Egyptian raw cubit plus 3 millimeters. Now, that just happens to be 1.727876 feet. That's a difference from that's a difference from a canonical cubit of 0.0378 millimeters. Now, to put that in context, that's half the width of a very thin human hair. Now, there are certain curly hairs that are quite thick in comparison, but a thin human hair is twice the width of the distance from this connection between there. So, literally splitting thin hairs to get this difference from there. So the numbers might look different if you look at it just quick, but the actual difference is so minute. So sun and the moon at 44, again connecting these various ancient units of measurements, blending together through the same systems of pendulums, geometry, arithmetic, astronomy, and music. 440 music scale would be a connection. The Great Pyramid, 440 cubits. It's just repeated so often in other aspects as well. But so harmony points, ancient units of measure, bringing us to these lovely numbers, including, well, 432, 108, 48, 36, etc., etc., joined together. And so 33 feet, the symbolic, the measurable connections as well, quite a bit more in regards to this, but so just to knock this one out. 33 feet, 33, sun, earth and moon, and have a good one.